Okay, so it's time. What you all have been waiting for, part 4. So last part I accidentally said they're going to the training camp. They're not doing that just yet. But before all that, so where I left off, Mitsuki had basically pulled Deku into his guest room bed while she was asleep and buried him in her chest. So, Deku had went to bed. It's the next morning now. So Deku, not Deku, sorry, Mitsuki, she wakes up. So she feels something, she feels like, not like a hard thing, she feels like this soft yet rough thing, like she's holding on to. She looks down and, she sees like this golden blonde hair, what's it called? And then she's like, Izuku? And then so he's like he's half awake. He's like, what? She's like, what are you doing? She's like, what are you doing? And then he's like, sleeping. He's like, what else am I doing? She's like, okay, but where are you sleeping? He's like, somewhere soft. And then she basically like tries to pull like him away, but he's still half asleep. So he just pulls in deeper basically. And he's like, 5 more minutes. She's like, you know where you are, right? And then he looks up. He's like, oh, he's half asleep, so he doesn't really care what he's saying. So he's like, oh, sorry about that. And she's like, so do you mind moving? And he's like, I kind of do, yeah. And then he just buries his face deeper again. So she's annoyed now. She's like, God damn it. She hits him in the head. He gets up real fast. He's like, what the fuck? And then, he still doesn't really know what he did. So he's like, what was that for? She was like, she just like sighs. She's like, come on, let's go. Get up. And then she's like, all right. And then she's like, sorry about falling asleep, by the way. And he's like, oh, it's fine, It's not like it's the first time you've done that. And then she's like, yeah, sure, all right. Just don't be an ass. And then he's like, all right, sorry. And then he makes breakfast again. So, he's making breakfast. Mitsuki's sitting on the couch in his hoodie. Deku's like, he's getting a weird sense of deja vu all of a sudden, right? So then he leaves the food cooking for a second. He goes to sit down with Mitsuki. Then, there's a knock on the door. He's like, wow, I'm really getting a weird sense of deja vu here. So he's like, you know what? I think I remember this from somewhere. So he thinks back. He's like, oh yeah, when that Jotaro guy showed up. He's like, so he checks the door before he opens it this time. He sees, I wouldn't say a man. He's like a kid around Deku's age, let's say. So he's 19 because Deku's in college. So, Deku opens the door. He's like, can I help you? And then the guy's like, hello there. I'm Giorno Giovanna. Nice to meet you. And, Dio, he's in Deku's head. He hears Giorno. He's like, damn. And then Deku, he's like, what is it now? What did you do to this guy? He's like, well, you see, how, like, I'm not father of the year, right? And then Deku, he's like, is this your son? And then, Dio's like, yeah, he is. And then he's like, so, are you Dio Brando? He's like, he just gets right to this. He's like, are you Dio Brando? Deku looks at him. He's like, yes and no. Like he's like, yes and no. And then Deku's like, are you the man from this photo? And, he shows him the photo. And Deku's like, again, yes and no. And then Giorno's like, can you explain that? And, Mista's behind him. He's like, can I just shoot this guy already? Like that's how he's feeling right now. So, Deku, he's about to explain all that. So he explains everything. And then, Giorno's like, okay, he gets it, He was like, he sweat dropped for a second because Deku looked at him. He's like, what's up? And then he's like, I thought I'd have to, put you through Requiem. And then Deku's like, what does that mean? You're like, don't worry about it. So Deku's like, all right. He got a bad feeling when he said Requiem because, Dio knows about Requiem arrows, I think. I don't know. But he knows about Requiem arrows, let's say, and he knows that, so he's like, oh, he got Requiem, and, Deku's like, the fuck's a Requiem? And, Dio explains what the fuck Requiem is. He's like, man, I need to get Requiem. He's like, nah, you don't need Requiem, you're already OP. So then he's like, so you got Requiem? He's like, yeah, I got Requiem, blah, blah, blah. He explains his Requiem ability. Deku was like, that's dumb OP, He's like, that's so dumb. Like, that's amazing. Like, because, he's still Deku, so he's, like, all, like, amazed by it. So, And then, Mitsuki hears, like, about, oh yeah, I'm the son of Dio, basically. Like, Giorno says it at one point. And then, Mitsuki hears about this, and she's like, hold up, wait a minute. She comes out of the corner like, son of who? Deku's like, so he explains it to her. That's Dio's son, and he's a reincarnation of Dio, so in a way, that's his son, which is awkward because they're both around the same age. Because I know Giorno's 15, but we're making him 19, because why the fuck not? And so he's like, yeah, well, I just came here because, well, I thought I've been looking for you, basically. He's like, I didn't know you died, really. I kind of figured that you died, and then, I saw you. And he's like, so how did you really know it was me? He was like, well, you screamed out Muda when you were fighting. That kind of gave me a hint. I thought maybe he's a brother. And then, you had the same kind of hair. So it was either you were, like, a brother who looked a lot like him, or you were, him, and then somehow aged down or something. But I did hear you were, like, a vampire from Mr. Cujo. All right. I got interrupted. Sorry, someone called me. But, like you said, I thought you were a vampire from I got told you were a vampire from Mr. Cujo. He's like, oh, you met that guy? He's like, yeah, something like that, And then he was like, oh, you've met Mr. Cujo as well? He's like, yeah, something like that. They both laugh a little bit. But then Deku's like, you know what? I kind of want to know about my son. Like he says that with like quotations, basically, since it's not really, well, it is, but it's weird. It's like how the Sage of Six Paths is with Naruto. Technically, that is his son, but not really. It's because they're reincarnated. So what's it called? So he's talking to Giorno. Giorno's telling him about how he's a mafia boss and stuff like that. And when Deku hears he's a mafia boss, he looks at him sideways for a second. And then, Giorno explains why he does it. And, Deku's like, that's actually, you're a good guy. Like, he's like, I'm such a proud father. Like, he's making jokes like, I'm such a proud father. And, Dio's in his head, like, he feels really bad for abandoning Giorno. Because Giorno did explain how he got, abused by the other guy. I forgot whoever the fuck he was. Giorno's stepdad. So he got told about how he was abused by his stepdad, and it was giving Dio a bit of flashbacks of his dad, and he was like, I thought I forgot about that guy, So Dio is like, hey, Izuku, can you do me a favor? And Dick was like, yeah, sure. Can you give me control for like a minute? And and then Dick was like, you sure you want to do that? He might actually hit you, and Dio's like, yeah, I'm sure. So basically, Deku, he gives Dio the wheels for a little while. Deku can't do this, like, all the time. He can only do it for, like, a set amount of time. Because, sometimes Dio will just, like, sometimes he'll realize, like, Dio's bored in his head, and he'll just be like, let me try getting control. So, it worked one day. So, he was just like, So, Dio's basically explaining how, he's sorry for what happened. He was thinking of his own plans before, his kid's life, because he knows he has more than one son. But, the reason why Dio's like this, you must be wondering, like, Dio would never do this for Giorno and stuff like that. It's because, how I said, Deku's personality is merging with, with Dio's? Well, it goes both ways, basically. So, Dio, he's starting to get, that kindness of Izuku, and he also still, feels bad, because how his father treated him, he's basically been treated. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I know I should have been a better father and stuff like that. And Giorno, he's like, it's fine, I'm happy where I am right now. Giorno's a very understanding, cool guy. He's a Jonathan. He got his personality from Jonathan more than Dio. Dio comments on this. He's like, you're a lot more like Jonathan than me. And he's like, who's Jonathan? He's like, your father? He doesn't know how to explain it. And then he's like, what? And then, Dio explains it slower, basically. He's like, yeah, I stole my brother's body and stuff like that. Weird stuff. But, he explains that, he's a lot more like Jonathan. And, he has a lot of respect for Jonathan now that he has Deku's personality. Because, in a lot of ways, Deku, in this one, is more like Jonathan. So, what's it called? So now, Giorno's like, well, it was nice catching up with you, Dad, and, that hits Deku on the side a bit, because it's still, kind of Dio. They're both trading out, so it still hits them, Dad, And Mitsuki laughs a little bit, at this comment, and then he's like, all right, Mista, let's get out of here. And he's like, all right, sure, boss. And, he heads out. So he's like, wow, my kid's got a crazy life, you know. And Mitsuki's like, that's all you have to say about having a son, He's like, well, I mean, what else am I supposed to say? Like, he's already 19, he can already take care of himself, basically, so I can't really do anything. Plus, he's a mafia boss, you know. And, they laugh about it a little bit. And then, he watches movies with her, and he's like, I have final exams in, like, a week. And she's like, I can, I can leave so you can study. It's like, no, I won't need to study. I'm good, because he's smart. He's smart. He's like, I'm just wondering what we're going to do. So, he gets to school a week later. We're doing a week time skip, yeah. So he gets to school, he was hanging out with Mitsuki, like, the entire week, basically. Bakugo was, like, training with, I don't know, someone, or just training alone, since he's such a fucking loner. So, Bakugo, he didn't notice, really, that Mitsuki wasn't there, because he just came home, took a shower, went straight to sleep, ate breakfast, said, I'm leaving, and then just dipped to train. Basically, it was very unhealthy, but, So, Deku gets there, and then, and then everybody's, like, he goes through class, and it's lunchtime, and everybody's talking, like, oh, what do you think the test is gonna be, and stuff like that. Kendo from Class 1B, she walks up, she's like, oh, you guys are talking about the test? Some third years told me that it would be robots, and that's what they did. And, Deku's like, I doubt it. And, and then everybody looks at Deku, because Deku doesn't really talk to anybody, even though, like, a lot of people sit next to him. So, like, the Deku squad is, Deku, of course, Kirishima, Mina, Kirishima because, Deku's manly, Mina because, he's edgy and she wants to be, bright, Suyu because she was in the group, the Deku group, because I was in Deku, I'm pretty sure. What's it called? Basically, like, Tokiyami because he's emo as well. So, what's it called? Just a few people like that. Like, Kaminari and Jiro are there, Momo's there, what's it called? Todoroki's there. All those people are basically there, but Deku doesn't really talk. They mostly talk. So he usually just sits down and eats like Shoto, Todoroki. So he basically just sits and eats with Todoroki. Like that's how they are. And then there's the rest of the people who always talk. So, Deku says, I doubt it. And, everybody's a little bit stunned because Deku doesn't really talk to anybody. He's like, yeah, I doubt that it's going to be robots. And she's like, why do you say that? And he's like, well, we kind of fought villains of the USJ, so they're probably going to do something different for us since we actually did something that, most students don't do. And, Kendo, she doesn't really want to say anything because she doesn't have a problem with Class 1A. So she's like, well, that makes sense. So she's like, well, either way, good luck. They're like, same to you, because they do have their final exams. So, what's it called? They get to Aizawa. Aizawa's just like, all right, we're going to be doing the final exams, getting your hero outfits. Everyone gets in their hero outfits. Deku's wearing his, Dio attire. So, everybody's like, all right, let's do this. Like, everybody's pumping themselves up, So they look at the list, and it says, against Aizawa will be, Shoto, Todoroki, Momo, and, all those, basically, like, the same roster as usual. And, Deku realizes that he's on a team with Bakugo. He's like, I'll try to team up with him. Because, like, Mitsuki thought something like this would happen. So she's like, if something happens and you're teamed up with, like, Katsuki, try to work with him as much as you can, And, like, he's like, I don't know if I could do that. And, she gave him the puppy eyes, so he's like, because, they're basically dating already. So they've basically, like, been dating for a while now. So he's like, fine. Like, he's annoyed by it, but, like, he can't beat puppy eyes, especially from Mitsuki. And then, what's it called? So now Deku, he's like, and he's like, all right, Katsuki. He's like, how are we gonna do this? And he's like, you just stay out of my way, nerd. And Deku's like, come on, we gotta be a team. And, everybody's surprised that Deku's trying to be a team. And they're wondering, like, why the fuck is Deku trying to be a team? Because, Deku's not usually, like, really caring about working with someone. He's like, we gotta be a team, stuff like that. They're thinking, it's because of the final exams and stuff like that. He's nervous or something, when really he's not. So they're like, all right, so who are we fighting? And All Might, he falls and he's like, and he has a smile. He's like, you'll be fighting me. And Bakugo, he gets a big smile, but Deku, he gets an even bigger smile. And then what's it called? Everybody notices this, and like a few teachers are sweat dropping. Like the people who know about what happened about One for All, they're sweat dropping. Like ooh. Ooh, either Deku's about to try his ass off or All Might's about to get it. Like there's no like stopping this basically. So Nezu did this just so like All Might and Deku could bury the hatchet. That's what he thinks about to happen, because he thinks that All Might's still stronger. Yeah, I know, it's funny. So Deku, he's smiling. He's like, listen, Katsuki, we can either work together on this, or I can make sure that you pass, and then I kick the shit out of All Might. And Bakugo's like, no fucking way, nerd. And so he's like, all right, fine, let's go. And they start walking, right? And Deku, he lags behind a little bit, and he just knocks Bakugo out. And like everybody's watching this, they're like, what the hell is he doing? And then Deku's like, he's like, Zawaru though. And then he just like, he's next to the exit, he's behind All Might, he throws Bakugo in the exit. He's like, all right. Like he cracks his knuckles. He's like, all right. Like it's your turn. And then like, what's it called? All Might looks at Deku. He's like, don't try it, hero. He's trying to be in person. He's like, nah, I'm not kicking the shit out of a villain. I'm kicking the shit out of All Might. Like he's like, don't give me no villain bullshit. Give me All Might. So so Deku, he appears like on the other side, back where he was. He's like, all right, we'll make this even. So he's walking towards All Might, right? And then All Might, he throws a smash, because that's what he did. He did the same shit in Ken. He threw a smash, but this time Deku, he's still walking. He doesn't give a shit about the smash, And All Might's sweat drops a little bit, because that was like, let's say a 25% smash, and Deku didn't react at all. So now like now he's like face to face with All Might. Like Deku is a little bit shorter than All Might. Like not a little bit, he's a lot of bit shorter, because All Might's tall as fuck for no reason. So he's looking up at All Might. He's like, all right, let's do this shit. So All Might, he's throwing punches, right? Like basically like what he did with Nomu, but like instead of hitting like the Nomu's fist, it's hitting the world, but he can't see the world. So like All Might, he's going like he's punching, like he's still like he's upping the power as like he goes. So like he's going like 30, 40, 50, like it's going up fast. And like at this point he's at 100, but he has the weights on. So Deku, he's like, you should take those weights off before you get your ass kicked, All Might's like, I can't do that, And then Deku, he's like, all right then. And then he just like breaks the weights with he stops time, and then he takes off the weights from All Might with the world. He's like, all right, bring it on. So he's like, All Might's like, I can't like fight you without my weights. And he's like, wow, not only he's like basically about to like talk shit. He's like, wow, you're such a failure. You can't even save your own master. Of course you can't even beat me. Like he says that, and then All Might, he looks up at him. He's like, you don't want this, and like you don't want to do that. Like you don't want to walk down that path, young Midoriya. He's like, no, I think I do want to walk down that path. He's like, come on. I mean, obviously, you're such a failure. You can't even beat All for One, right? And then so he's hitting deep wounds. He's like, yeah, you're just a scrawny boned man in the end. You're fake. like you're worse than Endeavor. He's just like roasting All Might. Like at least Endeavor has the decency to actually show people what he actually looks like after he turns off the flames and shit like that. And so like All Might now he's pissed. He's like young Midoriya, you don't want you should stop right now before you say something you might regret. And then Deku, he pushes the button. He's like, yeah, just like you regret not saving your master. And then like immediately, it's a 100% smash like going towards Deku, but it gets intercepted by the world. So it's like a punch blows for blows, and like Deku's laughing this whole time. He's like, like he has this evil ass laugh, and like everybody's scared now, cause now like Deku, he's overpowering All Might. And like All Might's like, what the hell? So now he's like going 120. Like he's burning through One for All, right? He's burning through it. And Deku realizes this. He's like, like, as much as, like, as much as I hate you and as much as a failure you are, like, he's like beating All Might into the ground, right? And then he's laughing as he's doing it. He's like beating All Might into the ground. Like, he's like, come on then. Come on. Like, he's like, can't you do any better? Everybody's watching this, they want to call it off, but All Might's still like punching back. So they're like, all right, so Deku hits him like one more time. All Might's like barely clinging on to consciousness. And then, Deku disappears, and then like everybody's looking around. And then you see Deku coming down with a road roller. He's like, roller. So, like, unlike the sports festival, he will hit All Might with this. He smashes it on All Might, and, like, he's punching it with the world. He's like, mura, 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 mura. Like, he's like, mura, 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 mura. Like, he's going full out. Like, he's actually, like, trying to kick the shit out of All Might. And, All Might's, like, taking all of this. And, like, he's half Small Might now, half All Might. And then, Deku's laughing. He's like, is this your symbol? He's like basically like WWE that shit. He's like, come on, bring me something more, bring me a challenge. He's like, is anyone left? Is that it? Is that it? He's like, come on. He's like, I expected better from the number one. All Might's just knocked out, and Deku's like, waste. So he's walking away, and All Might's just knocked out. Like, there's no getting up. He got his ass beat into the ground like he was nothing. So Deku, he's walking. He has the biggest smile ever. Like, imagine this smirk, but times 2. All right. So he has the biggest smile. He's walking, like, everybody's like, oh, you overdid it and stuff like that. And the teachers know what happened, so they're not like they're not saying anything. But like a few teachers who don't know are basically like, yeah, you did overdo it. And like Aizawa was like, that's enough. And everyone's like confused, and like he's like, some stuff happened between Midori and All Might, like basically like, that's all he says. He's like, but Midori, you shouldn't let your emotions cloud you. And he's like, yeah, whatever, like, because he's still pissy that he didn't get to beat All Might up more. Like, he wishes he could have gotten Prime All Might just to defeat him, because Prime All Might would have been difficult. Like, if he stopped time, he could have probably beaten Prime All Might. But, if without stopping time, it might have been like a 50-50. So, Deku now, he's like, that was a good day. Like, he does not regret what he did at all. Like, he was called to the principal's office. He was like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that much, blah, 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 blah. Deku's like, yeah, whatever you want, mouse, bear, dog, whatever the fuck you are. Like, because he's still, like, on cloud fucking 9, so he doesn't give a shit what he says at this point. And, Nezu's like, I could kick you out of this school. And, Deku looks at him, he's like, kick me out of this school because I'm the guy who beat All Might. And then he just walks out of the room, and, like, Nezu can't say anything because he is the guy who beat All Might with no weights at, like, 120%. So All Might now, his timer just dropped drastically. So he can be All Might for, like, an hour. Because let's say, just he can be All Might for an hour. So now, like, Deku, like, he's recognized as, like, the strongest person ever. And Bakugo, he's so mad because he not only didn't get to fight All Might, but he watched, like, the recording, basically, of, like, All Might getting his ass beat. Like it wasn't even a battle. It was an ass beating. Like nothing more. So, Deku, he's walking. He's like, it's a good day to be me. So he's leaving. He's like, he's on cloud 9. Mirio, he walks up to Deku. He's like, hey, man, because, Deku did talk to Mirio before. Because Mirio was a successor, and Deku did want to judge him, like, whether he was a worthy successor or not, or if All Might was on some bullshit. And he did see that Mirio was worthy. He was like, hey, Mirio. And he was like, the third years were watching the final exams for the first years, right? Just to see how they were. And he's like, oh, shit, were you really? He's like, did you enjoy the show? He's like, you went a little bit too far, man. He's like, nah, I did it perfectly fine. Like, I didn't kill him, did I? He's like, yeah, you didn't. He's like, then be grateful. He walks away. He leaves, Basically, like, everyone basically, it spread like wildfire that, like, a student beat the shit out of All Might. and like it was in the UA first, and then it spread to, it spread to the press. The press like was like, there are rumors that a UA student defeated All Might at his best. Like it's spreading like wild fucking fire, and it gets to All For One, of course, and All For One's like, this guy beat All Might pretty, like, they say it was like, they say like, because how words like spread around and they get mixed up, and you say there, yeah, it was a pretty long drawn out fight, but the kid pulled through, something like that. And then what's it called? And then All For One, he's like, give me the recording of this, because like he does have the spy. So the spy is like, sure, all right, I'll try. He's like, he does ask the spy what happened. He was like, it was a shit show. Like he's like, what do you mean? He's like, All Might had no fucking chance. It was done before, like it was done the moment like the battle begun. Like All For One, he's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure All Might tried his hardest? He's like, yeah, he was talking some major shit apparently. I didn't get it. It was something about how you couldn't save your master or something. And All For One realizes like what like he's saying basically. And he's like, oh, so he was saying all that, All For One smiling because he's thinking villain material, He's thinking like, that's villain material, or like at worst case scenario, I'll just steal his quirk. That's what he thinks. Little does he know it's a fucking stand, All For like, I'll say that All For One kind of knows about stands. He's heard of them, but he thinks they're myths. So, like, he's heard of Dio. Dio did challenge him at one point. But what's it called? But then, Dio disappeared out of nowhere because, he died. So everyone thought Dio died. So word spread around that All Might got his ass beat. And, Gran Torino heard about it. Basically, he's like, who the hell beat All Might, He's like, no way, this is right. So he calls up All Might. He's like, yo, All Might, you see what's going on in the news? He's like, yeah, I see. He hears him in like a mopier voice. He's like, what's going on? He's like, I think I made a mistake, He's like, what do you mean? Like, I took the quirk from Midoriya. It was he basically realized at this point that like Midoriya is not the villain, even though like what he did was hella villainous. Like, if he wanted to kill All Might, he could have, and like All Might can't even deny it because he got his ass beat. So yeah, it spread like wildfire, and like Gran Torino's like, well, you should, grow up from your mistakes. He's trying to be inspirational, but All Might's still mopey. He's like, yeah, right, and so Deku, he's like, Dio, he was dying the moment the battle started. He's like, oh my god, they gave you All Might, he's like, he knew like that this would happen one day. He just didn't know when. And, he's happy for, Deku. He's like, I'm glad for you. And, Mitsuki calls him up. He's like, yo, you heard about that UA student that beat All Might? And he's like, yeah, I heard about him. I even saw him, And she's like, yeah, oh, really? Who was it? And he was like, yeah, it was me. And then she's like, what? Because, like, let's say for plot's sake, he gets a recording of, like, the final exams. Like, they get a recording of the final exam so that they can, do better in the future for like fix mistakes that they have. He's like, yeah, I got a recording of this shit. You want to watch this? And then she's like, she knows that like Deku basically hates All Might, so she's like, sure, why not? So they go like she comes over. They watch like the absolute ass whooping that is Deku versus All Might. So she's like, wow, I can't believe like you actually said that. Like, is this your symbol? Like they're at the point where he's like, is this your symbol? As he's standing on top of the roller. And I didn't mention it, but he did like go, Yuri? Like, he did do the Yuri thing, but I can't say that. He's like, Yuri? Like, I can't do it. But he did do that. So like everyone's like, what the fuck was that? And like she was like, what was that? He was like, I don't know, it just came natural, So like she was like, all right. And then Deku, she was like, you shouldn't have gone that hard on him, though. She was like, yeah, but you didn't know the shit that he did, because he didn't explain One For All to her, because, he is sour about, getting dropped, basically, from having One For All, but, like, he's not about to snitch about One For All to everyone now, because, that puts people's lives at risk. So he's like, yeah, if only you knew. And then she was like, you could tell me, She's like, yeah, I've told you a lot of things, but this isn't my secret to tell. So she's like, all right, fine. And, again, they have a sleepover, basically. Same shit happens. Again, same shit happens. So then they go to school the night, like, after a week. And then, Aizawa was like, all right, we have the forest training camp. And just, everyone grab your shit, get ready to go. And he's like, all right. Like, everybody's like, all right, Deku, he's like, all right, this will be fun, I guess. And then so he's like, I don't really know what to train. He's planning on just training the world to stop time for even longer. Because, like, that's all he really can train. Because he's a master with his vampiric abilities at this point. But, like, he's starting to pull a Dio and use them less and less. If you've noticed, he hasn't, like, used his vampiric abilities a lot. Other than, like, his laser eyes, which are pretty cool, but what's it called? He'll learn a few things from this, From this, trip, basically. He'll learn a few things from it. So they're like, yeah, just get your shit and, get ready to go. So they're grabbing their stuff, they're getting ready to go. And then, he basically, like, just gets all this shit, he packs up, he's ready to go. And, he's gets on the bus, he's heading towards the forest training camp. And, that's where I'll leave this off. Alright, I know, I think it's a shorter one, I don't even know how long this video is. But, I'm making this short because I'm planning on giving you guys a double upload. Yes, because, I was going to make this, like, the 10 subscriber special. But then you guys got to 25. So I was like, shit. I'll just make a double upload. So, if you liked it, subscribe, If you're kind enough, click that, click that bell, that little bell. But, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But, have a good day. Later.